There is a solution for that is sponsored by VARC Solutions. VARC Solutions helps small businesses succeed by delivering expert QuickBooks bookkeeping, consulting, quick-base development, and integrated solutions. If you own a small to medium-sized business that uses QuickBooks or QuickBase, the experts at VARC Solutions can help. In business since 1999, with people who care and the knowledge and experience to solve your toughest problems. Visit varcsolutions.com for all your QuickBooks needs. Welcome back to another edition of There's a Solution for That, where we help small businesses succeed by discussing challenging business problems and best-in-class solutions. All right, welcome everybody to another edition of There's a Solution for That. My name is Brad White, your host, and we have a really great guest on the show today. Daniel McCaulley, who's the founder of Ultimus Engineering. And we're going to be talking about communities and engineering, two topics that you might not think to put together, but we're going to talk about it. So Daniel, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, Brad, appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Excited about what we're going to uncover today. And yeah, how do we bring those nerds and relationships and communities together, and how can we do that in a fun way?
So just for the audience, kind of give a little bit of background, like who you are and like what you guys do as a company, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the questions.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm a hometown kid for Plano, Texas. I know you and I share some similarities there, so that's
Yeah.
always been kind of fun to talk about. Yeah, grew up in Plano, graduated from Plano Senior High School, went off to uh, Arkansas Tech University for a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Went into the workforce, followed that up with a master's degree and then an MBA. So just kind of been a glutton for punishment for education throughout my career, but a big fan of lifelong learning. I think that's always important, always good to continue to challenge ourselves. And then after a career in oil and gas and with a stint in the construction space, working for a company who manufactures building wire and cable, was just led that it was time to start my own organization. Wanted to do it in a little bit different way, a little bit unique way, not just trying to offer engineering solutions for the fun of it, but do it in a way where I felt like we could make an impact kind of in a unique fashion.
Well, so let's dig into it. And I'm curious, again, this is not something that I would normally think to connect, design, construction, community, and how that all works together. But, one of the things that you and I kind of chatted a little bit about before was how in our various communities, we're seeing more of these types of spaces pop up that are not just let's go to a shopping center and have stores. There's a little bit of a combination of like stores and communities and neighborhoods and things like that, which I think is kind of cool. But tell the audience, like how you think differently when you're doing design projects, how you weave community into that. Like, how do you think about those types of things? Is one
Yeah.
of the ones I'm curious about.
Sure. Yeah. Lot there to unpack. So feel free to stop me anytime or we can circle back on anything. It really stems back to we live in this age of just infinite communication and instant communication in a lot of ways. 30 years ago, cell phones didn't exist. You had to page someone if you wanted them to call you. And that's not the case today. And I think Spider-Man said it best, or maybe it was Spider-Man's uncle, but with great power comes a great responsibility. And as professionals in this industry, and this I think is true for professionals across all industries, we have a responsibility not, I would say, just to do what we're asked, right? Which is provide engineering drawings, provide construction documents so that buildings can be built. But I think that we have an obligation, an ethical obligation, a moral obligation, a civic duty to the people who are going to be utilizing these spaces to do a little bit more. And that's why at Ultimus we think about things just a little bit differently. And our mission statement has changed over the years. It used to just be creating solutions to build better companies, but that felt a little dry. It felt a little shallow.
Mm-hmm.
And as we become more engaged with our clients and with our partner organizations over the years, we've developed it into the new mission statement, which is creating engineering solutions. So specificity matters, but to build better communities. And that community aspect is driven really at the heart of what we try to do, which is communicate and foster relationships deeper than the face value of just going in and creating engineering solutions. And so as these communities get bigger and they get more integrated again, we certainly have our traditional nuclear single family residential neighborhoods that here in North Texas can be massive and sprawling. And we certainly have our industrial hubs and our commercial hubs, but those are becoming more and more integrated daily. And so as we can think about how our interactions with others really matter, we can get to the true heart of who's going to be utilizing these spaces. And in virtually every instance, it's not just the architect or the general contractor.
Well, I love that, and there's when I think about this topic, and really, quite frankly, before you and I met, I hadn't thought about this topic. So, just transparently, it's like this is something that I've been like, okay, I've got to go think about this now. Um, is I think one of the things that I've seen trend wise with businesses, with organizations, especially with the younger generations that are entering the workforce, is they have more and more a need to have a purpose, right? A purpose beyond themselves, a purpose beyond, yes, I show up, I do my job, and I go home. And so one of the things that I think is kind of cool about what you guys do, especially for the folks that work with you and for you, is now it's a bigger and broader vision there. It's a bigger and broader reason to show up and design, cool buildings or cool spaces. Right? Because there's an outcome there. It's not just a building that people are going to start working in. You're building a space that you want to impact the communities around you, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's terminology that we call live, work, play. And the generations, younger generations now, less and less are even owning cars. I have several friends of even a generation or two younger than me that they don't have a car; they just Uber everywhere. And for my generation and older, like that's mind blowing. I mean, it was a rite of passage to own a car, and I have my
Same, right?
transportation. Yeah, and in these spaces now that we are getting so closely integrated in these live, work, play environments, it's not really needed. We talk about this other concept called a 5 minute city, and that's that you have everything you need within 5 minutes of you. And so, why would you need a car? But the importance to that is people need to feel more connected to that space. It can't just be this sprawling mega urban environment or this residential community. It's like you need a little bit of everything. And you talked about having a sense of purpose and a connection. Yeah, I mean, my father-in-law worked for IBM for 47 years, and that doesn't happen anymore. So it's kind of a twofold thing. It's just one is how can we get people feeling connected to the projects they work on, feel connected to the community, but how can they also feel connected to organization? Um, you know, Job hopping hardly isn't a phrase anymore. You just
Yeah.
expect that people are going to be 2 to 3 years and they move on. And a paycheck is not always the end all end all. COVID certainly taught us the importance of flexibility of work-life balance and the ability to work remote. And that certainly has its challenges that we work through every day. Um, but giving people another purpose, another reason to look beyond just what's on their desk. There's a really good book called Moonshot, and essentially it talks about when we went to the moon. And one of the smaller concepts of that book essentially is talking about how the teams at NASA use this to encourage and engage their engineers to, again, look beyond just what was in front of their desk. And I've used this with employees, not just with Ultimus, but in organizations in the past. And one thing I recommend is like, look, day in and day out, you aren't always going to be intimately, deeply, vastly in love with every project you ever work on. But in the situations where that's maybe a little bit of a challenge, and maybe you can't connect with the end user, whatever it may be, find a way to connect with yourself. And if you have a passion for tinkering with cars, if you like to rebuild and revamp and soup up automotive vehicles, and let's say you're a product designer working for, I don't know, maybe you're designing consumer goods, or maybe you're working in wire and cable, whatever it may be, realize that what you're working on at any given time can have a tie-in with your own personal life. And so think about the broader scope of systems. Think about, from again, as an engineering perspective, a product developer, if you can take certain design criteria or methodology or processes in whatever you're doing at work, if you can find a way to bring that into some kind of personal passion of yours, generally that goes both ways. And it's again just a different way of thinking about engineering, where in a field that is very commonly super ultra focused on this one single technical specificity, we can broaden those horizons, and it just helps people feel more engaged, not just with their projects, but with the company. And then if they feel like there is a nice blend of personal life and work life, it helps people feel more connected across the board. And so that's personal, it's spiritual, it's with the company, and then that is not only on the front end, but on the back end, when you can get that tie-in with community engagement, you can realize, yeah, we're building a 400 key apartment complex, and that's great, and it's for this developer with an infinite amount of money, and that's fine, because they pay the checks, and we appreciate that. But at the end of the day, who are the families that are living there?
Yeah.
And you may never meet them, and it may be on the other side of the country, but um, those are the things that we think about. And so it's not just about designing something that meets minimum code or checks the box on a certain design criteria, but it's a constant reminder that there is something more, and we can't just fall in love with that and fall over that on every single project. But it's always just that reminder in the culture and everything we do day in and day out that there is a bigger piece of it.
No, I love that, and this is a topic that really goes even beyond like the specifics about engineering spaces. But the overarching point there is like creating communities where people can meet, gather, connect, fall in love, go, entertain themselves. I mean, all those different types of things. And I know that like in the North Dallas Plano area, right? There's some really cool shopping centers, quote unquote, that have been. I don't even know what you call them. There's probably a specific phrase, right? These areas that are combination apartment, condos, shopping, eat, food, restaurants, those kind of things. Is there a name for that? Just
Yeah, that's typically what we would refer to as that live work play scenario.
okay.
So it's
Yep.
apartment complexes, where maybe even on the bottom floor you would have shopping, restaurants, retail. Maybe floors 2 through 4 could be shared workspaces like a Minute Suites or a Lucid Private Office or a Cato or something like that. And then maybe floors 5 through 10 would be apartments. And
Yep.
there are people that live there that go down to floor 2. They put in their 8 to 5, and at lunch they go down to the first floor and they're swinging through Chipotle or Starbucks or whatever it may be. And you've got this really cool, I mean, top 5 minute city of 5 seconds, a 5 floor city even.
Right. Five floor
Uh,
city.
yeah, and it really is. And maybe there's not a hospital on the first floor, but in those environments, and we've seen that if you're familiar with the North Texas area, gosh, when I was growing up, the hot spot to be was a place called Collin Creek Mall. And it was the only, you know, well, I say well established, kind of for the middle class. I think North Park Mall, kind of down in the more affluent areas of Dallas, existed. This is before the days of Stonebriar Mall up in Frisco. And Collin Creek Mall is no more. It's a construction site. They raised all the buildings. I remember when J.C. Penney was going out of business, I went in and bought a watch for 95% off because they were just trying to liquidate everything. And that was the last shopping that I did at Collin Creek Mall. But that is now, I forget who the developer is, but that's now a multi-billion-dollar development, and they're about to break ground on it. The construction fences are up. They've got the renderings. It is going to be, I mean, transformational is not even begin to describe it. And
Yeah.
so a development like that to just massively revitalize Plano, Texas. I mean, we're talking high-rise buildings and, apartment complexes and condo and shopping and entertainment district and
Yeah.
bars and restaurants and every, I don't even know what all's going into it, but it's going to be game changing, and that just energizing back to a community that I grew up in, I know you did too,
Yeah.
is certainly going to be a sight to see.
No, it is revolutionary, and I like one of my favorite areas is the Shops of Legacy, and it's kind of cool that when I go there, there's the Legacy Food Hall, and
Hmm.
and that whole space is a whole nother thing that is kind of mind blowing. You walk in, and you're like, oh, I only have 80 food choices, to pick from here. It's so funny because when I go with my family, we all just kind of scatter. It's like I'm going to the sushi place, and somebody else is going to the Mexican, somebody else is going to the steak, and somebody else is going to the waffle store. I just think it's so cool that you can go into a space, have all access to all these different food choices, but and here's, I think, the community connection there. You also are surrounded by about 1,000 other people that are doing the same thing. And you strike up conversations. You're sitting next to somebody that you never would have met before if you
Mhm.
just were in your house or in your condo. So I think that's just those kind of spaces where it's just a novel idea. It's a very creative example of how to live and build spaces. Is I think where, at least in my opinion, where we're going as it relates to community. So, well, let's go into one of the topics that I know we wanted to talk about, which is sort of like this stereotype of
Mhm.
engineers, and maybe them not being communicators at the level that you're talking about. Because again, that's something I think you're trying to address, right?
Yeah, it absolutely. And it's funny, I chuckle when you talked about, you and your family sitting down and maybe striking up a conversation with a stranger. For any engineer that's listening, you're probably thinking, that sounds terrible. I would never do that.
Right.
And that's a very common personality trait that we stereotype engineers, and a lot of engineers tend to be a little bit maybe on the reserve side, less purposefully outgoing, not for really any fault or reason other than, well, listen, if you're going to be that good and that technical at your craft, like you've got to hone that. And generally, you're not spending time honing the skills of communication or public speaking or anything like that. And so it's something that I discovered, gosh, I mean, early on in my career. And I think we can all think back to who was the smartest kid in the class. It was probably the one who was really good at math and science. And maybe that was the last person you picked for the dodgeball team. Again, I'm not trying to ruffle any
Here,
feathers or
cheers.
bring it, yeah, bring up any core moments. But it happens. It happens to the best of us. But over time, I sort of saw that play out, and then I get into college, and it's more of the same. And not to say, certainly not trying to generalize all engineers. Some of us are blessed with certain gifts, and some of us
Yeah.
have to work harder at certain things. But when I got into the professional workforce, my first place of employment, they were utilizing an outsourced third-party engineering company. And we can talk about overseas engineering versus domestic, and that's maybe a whole podcast in of itself. But
Yep.
um, what I got a very quick understanding of is that generally, engineers are not great communicators. They are blunt and to the point, and just tell me what you need to tell me what I need you to tell me, and leave me alone. I understand what I need to do, and I'll get with you what you want. Engineers, I don't want to call them people pleasers, but it's like, look, give me a task. I will figure out how to do this, probably better and more efficiently than anyone else, because that's what we're trained and that's what we're inherently good at. But like, don't bother me about it because I'm doing what you asked me to do. And in the grand scheme of things, that's all good and well, until we start to kind of get to this day and age where it's like relationships. And again, I keep going back to the whole COVID thing. And I think, got a really good dose of like why it's so important to have people in our lives. And people in general work best through collaboration and meetings and communicating. And that was kind of the tipping point for me to go and start this company. But tying it back to the communication piece, not to say that every engineer needs to be a used car salesman, but I think that there are certain things that we can step back and realize about ourselves as technical experts, that people come to us for solutions.
Yeah.
And we already check that box, especially if you're a professional engineer, you have a master's degree or a doctorate, and you are already recognized as an expert in your field. Like, let that be good enough. Like, people are always already coming to you because they need your help, they need your guidance. They're already saying, listen, professional engineer, you are the knower of all things. Can you help me out? And take a little bit of pride in that. We don't want to be too prideful over everything, but just acknowledge the fact, like, look, you're coming to me for help, and let's be stewards of knowledge. Let's be stewards of sharing information. And just because you know something as an engineer, look, just because somebody else knows it doesn't mean that they're going to take your job or that they're not going to come back to you again. In many cases, it's exactly the opposite. And that's one of the things that we try to do is we share not necessarily trade secrets or things that we've invented within our company, but we do lunch and learns for our clients, like our aquatics division, for example. We'll host lunch and learns for our clients, which are largely commercial swimming pool contractors. where we share with them kind of the ins and outs and thought process of how do we lay out piping systems? How do we design swimming pool foundations? What kind of calculations do we know we need to run to size equipment and make sure things meet pool code? And that's information that they're just going to take and be more competitive with their bids and be able to get better projects. And then they're going to come to us and do the engineering. They're not engineers, but equip people with enough knowledge where they can be more powerful, and they're going to come back to you because they like that. And so tying that back to the relationship and communication aspect of it, I mean, there's all kinds of tips and tricks, and we can talk about some of those different things to do, but essentially realizing that, as engineers, if we can sort of, take off this armor of just being the technical expert, and well, if you want anything, you're going to have to come to me. It's like, well, people already are. So let's try to be a little more friendly about it, and
Yeah.
share information and do it in a way that is more engaging and better facilitating of fun conversations.
No, that's awesome. There's so many thoughts that are just going through my head right now. So many examples that I'm thinking about, and I want to just kind of share a few of them because I think it's interesting conversation. Um, One of the things that you brought up about like being thoughtful about like how you design and build stuff is I think maybe engineers as an example, and by the way, I graduated with an MIS degree, which is on that computer programming side of things. So a lot of folks that are in my wheelhouse background experience are the same way, right? It's like I can design this, I can program this, I don't need people. Just let me sit in
Exactly.
front of a computer. I was a little bit of a different mold, I guess you'd say. But that's a lot of the folks that I knew in the industry were that way. But I think part of this is just acknowledging that, we're not whole people in terms of like the entire human experience. And so what might be good for us might not be good for the recipients of our work.
Sure.
um, I just think, and I try to just take this to like super simple examples. I walk out on my front lawn, and if you were in my front lawn, there's like these every about 6 to 8 feet, there's these little holes that are kind of depressed areas of the ground, and that's where they put the valve cover, the valve thing for the sprinkler system, right? I'm like, I don't like that. Trust me, the engineers who put that together, they weren't thinking, I wonder how Brad is gonna like these holes in the middle of his front lawn, you know, because they weren't trying to design it for me. They were trying to design it maybe the most efficiently, right? The least expensively, right? We got to have these pipes and these things go, in the ground before the grass goes on top of it, very efficiently. Whereas if they would have said, I wonder what Brad's family experience is going to be walking out on the front lawn. It might be a little bit more expensive, but wouldn't it be great if we like routed underneath the grass to this one central area outside the walk path and put all the valves there? Wouldn't that have been great?
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's it. And I'm sure everybody listening right now has that one thing. They're like, yeah, what kind of just non-thoughtful engineer came up with this? And that's why Shark Tank is such a popular show.
Yeah.
And in some instances, that's almost job security for engineers, because in that instance, okay, well, you've already got this problem. Like, maybe we could have done it differently, but now how do we go back, and how do you have that engineer or that firm that wants to know all about Brad's family and wants to know what your pain points are? They show up, they knock on your door, you tell them the story, and then they go invent something that now hides that valve cover, or now makes your landscape more accessible, where you get the
Yeah.
best of both worlds. And so there's this whole kind of world of aftermarket engineering, if you will, where people do try to dive in and get a little bit deeper. So yeah, lots of job security for people like that, but
Oh my
it's a
gosh.
good point. The upfront times, it's a lot of it's cost, a lot of it's, well, we're designing it for the contractor or the landscape architect in that instance,
Yeah.
whoever may be doing something. Just get it out the door and make it copy paste and make it economical, and then
Yeah.
let someone else figure it out later.
Well, you get your work cut out for you, I can tell you that much, because there's so many opportunities to improve. I walk out on my back lawn, right, and I've got a smallish type of porch, but if I go out there for more than 10 minutes in the summer in Texas, the air conditioning blows up and starts being very, very noisy. can't really enjoy the backyard anymore. So there's all these little things that if we really pay attention to, can make a difference. But tell us a little bit more. I know one of the things that you, again, before the show, that you and I talked about was, you have a heart for a nonprofit or two. Tell us a little bit about that part of what you do.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this really stems back to building relationships. It was back in 2020 that I was part of an organization called Leadership McKinney, which is a year-long professional development program. Most cities have something like this, but they take leaders from the community. They could be business owners. It can even be individuals. You don't have to be an owner of a company or organization to do this. And they put them in a class of anywhere between 15 to maybe 25 or 30 people. And you learn about city and government and all this kind of good stuff. And there's some professional development and really, really great programs. Highly encourage everybody to get involved with that if they have an opportunity. But through my time there, I met someone who was the executive director for an organization called Hugs Cafe. And Hugs Cafe started in downtown McKinney, so kind of the northeast side of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And the mission of Hugs Cafe is that they provide employment opportunities for adults with special needs. And they have this wonderful little sandwich shop. And I forget the exact hours are open. It's like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. or something like that, Tuesday through Thursday. So not massive hours, but if you're ever in that part of the world, go get some good food. But go in and be greeted by some of the happiest and most joyful people on the planet. Everybody from the host or hostess to the wait staff, the people in the kitchen, the folks bussing tables at the end of the day, everybody has some varying degree of disability, mental disability. And this organization is solely focused on giving back, giving adults another chance in life. And they've been around for, gosh, I wish I knew the exact number, but they've been around for quite some time. Their founder, president, CEO is Ruth, and she has been on Good Morning America and a number of talk shows. So look up Hugs Cafe, find Ruth, find Lauren. Really, really fantastic people to follow their story. But about 4 years ago now, the executive director reached out to me and said, "Hey, Daniel, I know that you have started your own company. I think you do engineering things, and I don't know exactly what that means, but we're looking to have a fundraising campaign, build a new headquarters. We're going to need all things engineering. And is that something that you can help with?" And I couldn't even hardly let her finish the sentence before I was trying to say, "What do you need from me? How can I help you?"
Right.
And so partnering with this organization for a number of years now, sponsoring their end of year banquets. They are in the process of, they're currently under construction for a second cafe down in the Dallas area. They're still in the fundraising campaign for their new headquarters and full training kitchen. So now it's not just going to be training the employees that work at their kitchen, but training larger masses within the greater community. So these adults with special needs, if they don't go work directly for Hugs, they're going to Starbucks, they're going to Hilton, they're going to a lot of these hospitality
Right.
places that need some of the hardest workers that you could ever possibly imagine. And just giving people another chance, but it's equipping them with the skills to do so. And so all that to say is from very early days of Ultimus Engineering, we've been intimately engaged with the Hugs organization. And we're doing a lot of engineering work for them at no cost and providing insight and coordination meetings with architects, certainly on the larger new headquarters development. And our engineers can't get enough of it. They're working late, they're working weekends, they're driving across town to help these folks. And it's just really cool to see again that deeper purpose. There's no
Yeah.
money in it. The engineers are still getting paid their salary to work, and so that's fine. But they know the company isn't making any money on it, but it's doing it for a bigger reason. And to see them to go out of their way to do the things on the evenings, to go to things on the weekends, it's just really cool to see that tie in. So that's such a fantastic organization
Yeah.
to stand behind and to partner with. It's been cool to see them grow, and they're talking about franchising in multiple states across the country now. And I know that Ruth and Lauren are constantly flying around talking with other people. So yeah, check them out, look them up. Hugs Cafe, really good organization to be a part of. And definitely if you're around the McKinney, North Dallas area, stop in and they say stop in and get a hug.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check it out. Um, well, I think a lot of what you just talked about, again, it's tapping back into that purpose, right? We're not just going through life taking up space. We're trying to impact the people around us and giving them purpose and passion within our businesses. I love what you're doing, and I think it's awesome. And also just for the folks that are listening and watching, this is hopefully where maybe you're reflecting right now. Maybe you're thinking about this right now. You may not be an engineer, totally fine, right? You may be an attorney. You may be a CPA. You might be a a plumber. Who knows what you are, right? You can take these concepts that Daniel's talking about and apply them within your space, within the people that you meet, the people that you run into. And, just like with any profession, I just brought up, plumbing just kind of randomly there, but there's a difference between showing up as a plumber and doing the job and leaving versus a plumber that makes you, feel important and special while they're there and does their job and then leaves, right? So I think we can all be more mindful of how to impact the people around us in a bigger way, in a more compelling way, in a more real way. Um, and so let's almost wrap up the show with maybe just another topic related to that, which is okay. So you're going out as an engineer and you're designing spaces and designing buildings and things like that. Can you give us an example of how you've done that and maybe some of the impact that you have had, like in a real way with some of these projects you've done?
Yeah, for sure. One project that we worked on a couple of years ago, this is such a cool, like, glow up story, if you will. There was a couple that had reached out, and they, for a number of years, had had an extremely successful taco truck down in the city of Houston. And day in, day out, year after year, their customers, loyal customers, kept saying, "Listen, you guys really need to expand. Like, you need another truck or you need a brick and mortar." And it really just, wasn't feasible because you can only generate so much revenue from a taco truck. And again, they were successful in what they did, but people would clamor for these tacos. Orange Taco, by the way, is the name of the taco truck down there in Houston. And they were finally afforded the opportunity, like, okay, listen, we've got a shot to do something a little bit more. Let's move into the mall, right? Obviously, lots of foot traffic, bigger visibility, bigger footprint, expanded menu, all these really, really great things. The owners did not have any construction experience, no engineering experience. They found an architect. The architect really didn't have any great engineering connections, and they stumbled upon Ultimus Engineering. And we thought it was just such a cool story. This is like the penultimate American dream, right? It's you start from nothing, maybe dishing out tacos to friends and family, to now you've got a truck that's on the street corner at 2 o'clock in the morning, people getting out of the bars, to now you set up a little bit more locally, you're getting the Saturday afternoon crowd, and then you're moving into the mall, and then hopefully lots of better things to come for those folks. Um, but a lot of that was coaching and guiding through the process. Again, it wasn't just, okay, well, give me your architecture drawings and we'll get you a set of permit MEP sets for this mall. It was really no structural engineering in that. It was, repurposing an existing food court station. But it was more than that. It was, how do we help inform and coach and guide these restaurant owners? I'm not going to tell them how to make a taco. They obviously have expertise in that. But how do we help coach them through, hey, what are some realistic expectations for timelines and costs and deliverables? And what do we need from you? And what are you ultimately going to need from us? And so working through them with that gave us some really good opportunities to have some focused conversations. Again, a lot of times tough conversations come from misunderstandings. And anytime somebody ventures into a new space, going from making tacos to construction, like, there's going to be some learning curves. And it was just a cool opportunity to coach and inform. And at the end of it, they were like, it's kind of like someone who builds a house for the first time, right? You don't really know what to expect. You learn a lot on the way. There's things that you would do differently. And they're like, hey, we're excited for, hopefully in the near future, if we can expand, like, do this again, a lot of lessons learned. But it was cool to help just walk through that process. And we get similar phone calls all the times people who want to be developers. Say if they've got some money and they've saved it up and they're like, well, I want to build a strip center. All right. Well, what do you know about that? Well, I've got some friends, I've got a connection with a guy who, he's got a Subway franchise, or my buddy owns a coffee shop, or whatever it may be. But it's like, well, you're going to spend $3 million to put up this building. Like, you need more than a couple tenants. And those are just always the exciting conversations when I get a call in. Well, how did you hear about us? Well, I just found you on Google. Okay, that's great. Do you have an architect? Do you have a landscape architect, a civil engineer, a general contractor, all these other disciplines? No, but I know, I hear this exact quote all the time. It's so funny. I know engineers know things. So I found the closest one near me, and you guys had great Google reviews. So I was hoping you could help. And I'm just like, this is what we're here for, right? Is
I
to,
love
to
it.
build those relationships, pull in the right architect partner, pull in the right general contractor, and coach these individuals who don't know anything about construction. They're like, well, I mean, can't you just kind of tear up the ground a little bit and I'll go to Lowe's and get some quickcrete and
Uh-huh.
foundation's the foundation? It's like, sure. But it's really funny. So it's like, again, I get that phone call probably every 3 or 4 weeks of someone who is first time into the industry of construction. And that is really where we get excited, because we can do that coaching. We can have that guidance and just really have a good information sharing session. And sometimes it's more joyous conversations than others, but at the end of the day, we're here to share information,
Yeah.
and those are the fun projects.
What's so fun about what's so fun and funny about what you just said was, I have never ever gone into Google and said engineer near me.
Yeah, most people don't.
Subway, Starbucks,
Yeah.
absolutely. A taco stand near me. I've done
Taco
all that.
stand. Yeah.
It's never occurred to me to search for engineer near me, but now I know, and now I know a reason that maybe I should. Well,
Yeah.
this has been great, Daniel. Let's for those that are listening, maybe there may be somebody out there that's like, Daniel's exactly who I've been looking for. I need someone that I can partner with to go build a really, really cool space that's going to impact my community, or what have you. Or quite frankly, maybe there's just somebody that's like, hey, I've had similar ideas, similar thoughts, but maybe it has nothing to do with engineering. Maybe it has nothing to do with construction, but might want to reach out to you and just kind of brainstorm and think through and get your perspective. Because that's ultimately what makes better results. So if someone wants to call you and talk about engineering stuff, or other stuff, how do they get a hold of you?
I'd love that. That'd be fantastic. So our website's a great place to start. It's simply ultimus.engineering, or more conventionally, ultimusengineering.com. That has our phone number. It has a general info email address right there at the top, super easy to find. Otherwise, if you'd rather just shoot me an email, it's simply info at ultimusengineering.com. Or even better, if you want to reach out to me personally, it's my first initial last name, so D McCaulley at ultimusengineering.com. My cell phone number, if you want to be so bold as to reach out directly, is 214-384-7762. And I would love to have those conversations, engineering or otherwise.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. And what I tell people at the end of these shows is like, and if you didn't get all that, reach out to me, Brad White, Bark Solutions, and we'd be happy to get you in touch. Like we know where Daniel is. We know his contact. So happy to bring people back to you if they reach out to me. So thanks for coming again, Daniel, and really enjoyed the conversation.
It's been a pleasure, Brad. Looking forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. And for those of you that are watching, that are listening, again, really interesting topics. I hope you enjoyed this one. I've learned a few things that, quite frankly, I didn't even think about. So hopefully you're getting some of that same type of value out of the show. We'd love to have you continue to watch and listen and learn, and we will see you again next week. There is a Solution for That is produced by VARK Solutions. This episode was produced by Ashley White and Aaron Riley. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Watch the video version on youtube.com/There's a Solution for That. Or visit varcsolutions.com/podcast, where you'll find our entire podcast archive, as well as show notes, links to solution providers, and complete transcripts of every episode. If you love the podcast, please leave a review with your comments.